Hey everybody, welcome to day 8 of the Fill My Cup Challenge. I'm Lelo. I hope that you guys have been enjoying this. We're going to be on this journey for the whole month of December. But today I just wanted to have a brief conversation, or maybe just perhaps take a different route to the way that I've been doing this every day. So this might be a little bit of a lengthier video than other days. But if you know me, and if you've come across my work on other platforms, you know that ordinarily I speak on wealth and I speak on wellness. So I have a podcast called the Wisdom for Wealth podcast with Lelo, and I'm currently on season 2 of that podcast. Matter of fact, almost at the end of season 2. But ordinarily I speak about wealth and wellness because I'm passionate about, financial transformation and people truly winning in their lives. But one thing that I've come to realize, and this is me, is that there's more to wealth than just winning financially, right? There's so many people out there who can find themselves in situations where they've got all the money in the world, but they're unhappy, where they're unfulfilled, where they're lonely. So when I speak of wealth, I don't just speak of the financial area, right? Like, yes, we do speak about that. We're going to talk about investing. We're going to talk about budgeting and all of that kind of stuff. But we also speak about how to build a life that you don't need to escape from, right? Because ultimately, you want to live a life that you don't want to escape. You don't constantly need a holiday from it. You don't constantly need to run from it. You don't constantly need these physical accoutrements to be able to enjoy your life, right? And one of the things that I've come to learn is that there's 6 building blocks to wealth, right? So we've got the financial arena, which we all know and we all can agree, but we have the spiritual arena, we have the mental and emotional, we have relational, we have physical health, we have divine purpose. So there's 6 areas, right? And I just think that if you're going to win in terms of building a life that you love and a life that you don't want to escape from, you're going to have to do work in all of these 6 areas. Why? Because I believe that all of life is interrelated. Okay, all of life is interrelated. You cannot compartmentalize in life, right? How you're doing spiritually affects how you're doing emotionally. It affects how you're doing relationally. How you're doing relationally affects how you're doing emotionally, and how you're doing mentally. And how you're doing mentally affects how you're doing in many other ways in your life, right? So everything affects everything, right? We can't compartmentalize when it comes to life. And so this is where this Fill My Cup challenge fits in, right? Where I'm having a day-to-day conversation that is aimed at focusing at the spiritual health, right? We're focusing on spiritual health. We're focusing on, how we're doing spiritually as it pertains to our lives. And I think for me, when I look at those 6 building blocks of wealth, there's an external arena and then there's an internal arena as well, right? And so the internal are more like the spiritual health. Excuse me, somebody's calling me on my phone. The spiritual health, the emotional, the mental, those are all the internal stuff that nobody gets to see. But we also have the external arena in our lives, which are the financial, the physical, the relational, and the divine purpose. So those are the more external things that we do. And if you look at one's life, you can almost think about it as a tree, right? Trees have roots, and roots are the things that we don't get to see. They're under the soil. But trees also have the branch, the bark and the leaves and all of that. And that's the external stuff. And I think we can get so caught up pursuing the external stuff, ignoring the internal, or thinking that because the internal is unseen, then it's less important. And I think the reason where we are globally in terms of mental health issues, in terms of, depression and anxiety, and just people just struggling with the high suicide rates, is because I think we've minimized the importance of doing the inner work. We've minimized the inner work because it's unseen, right? And we've emphasized what is seen, right? If we were a tree, we're emphasizing the leaves, we're emphasizing the branches, we're emphasizing the body of the tree, the bark. Because in our minds, whatever is unseen is treated as something that is less important. But I beg to differ, because I think those internal areas of our lives are like roots, right? And if you know anything about planting, you know that if you're going to water, you have to water at the root level. Like the water needs to go in the ground, water the roots, because the rest of the tree gets nutrients and gets water from the root upwards, right? And so if we're going to have conversations about wealth and wellness, and I'll be posting more stuff on YouTube about my podcast, about the other work that I do and the speaking and all of that, I want you to know that I don't compartmentalize when it comes to life. So when you see me have a conversation about spiritual health, it's because I truly believe that it's a necessary ingredient to winning in this life thing. Okay? And so I'm just looking at that portion that I've just shared with you. I look at scriptures like Matthew 6, right? Where Jesus is having a conversation. This is part of what we call the Sermon on the Mount. And Matthew 6 in particular, I would say Jesus is zooming in on spiritual disciplines, right? He's looking at giving, he's looking at fasting, he's looking at prayer. You know, he's looking at some of the spiritual disciplines that we practice today that help us in communion and intimacy with God. But one of the things that I notice about him speaking about giving, speaking about prayer, speaking about fasting, is that there's this one common thread that Jesus keeps pointing to. And he keeps saying, so, and he says this about giving, right? So Matthew 6 verse 4, he says, no, Matthew 6 verse 3, he says, but when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, right? So this is the portion that I want. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you openly, right? If you look at what he says about prayer, from verse 7, he says, and when you pray, do not keep on babbling like the pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him, right? And no, matter of fact, I wanted to read verse 6. He says, but when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you openly. Another one is fasting, right? He says, this is verse 18. He says, so that it will be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you openly. So there's this common thread, this theme about what you're doing in secret and how God has a way of recording. God has a way of rewarding what we do in secret openly, right? So there's an internal world and there's an external world. And so as we do the Fill My Cup challenge, my encouragement to you is to do the work. Do the internal work. Do the work behind closed doors. Do the work of pursuing God and having a relationship with God. Because what you do in secret, God rewards openly. Sometimes there's certain things that we crave for. So we can go on social media, we can look at other people's lives, and we can be like, you know what? I really would like to have a marriage that looks like this. I really would like to have such success in my purpose and in my work. I really would like to have a body that looks like that, for instance, or be that healthy. And those are all external things that we want. And I think what the scripture is trying to tell us is most external things that you see that are good, that you crave for, most of them are rooted behind work that you can't see. So if we're going to be successful, if we're going to be people that God fills our cup, we need to be a people that is dedicated to doing the work that is done in secret. We need to be committed to doing the work behind closed doors. I love Luke 4, right? In verse 42, it says, at daybreak, Jesus went out to a solitary place. The people were looking for him. And when they came where he was, they tried to keep him from leaving, right? So the portion that I want about that is that Jesus went to a solitary place. If Jesus needed time to be alone, if Jesus needed time to do that work, to be one with God, well, he was one, but because he was God, but to have that solitary moment, that solitude, why wouldn't we need it? Why wouldn't we need to go deep in terms of our spiritual health? Why wouldn't we need to prioritize solitary moments with God? You don't get to live a successful life without doing the inner work. And so this Fill My Cup challenge is an encouragement to other people to do the work internally. So when we do have conversations about wealth, when we do have conversations about the external arena in our lives, then there's an understanding that most of the external stuff is rooted on the internal. And so I just need you to know that the elevation you're seeking externally is rooted in depth, right? Elevation requires depth. The higher you go, the deeper your roots need to be. We can underestimate what it costs to be successful externally. And if we're not rooted, if we don't have the roots emotionally, spiritually, mentally, we're not going to be able to sustain the elevation that we're seeking God for. And if elevation is what you're looking for in 2024, I'm here to encourage you that elevation requires depth. Let's do the work. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.